Well, it's the next morning. It's I got up at about 3:30, because I was excited. It's 5 what? 40 almost. So I've been whacking and schmacking. It looks similar to the last video, but it's considerably different. So I had a gap here. You can see the fold. I mean, I got to ding this out, but I actually held my backing right here, and you can see the shadow of the line as I was pulling this material closer to the fender. That cut was where it was bent. It was bent right there, and I moved it out, and then I sanded the radius. You can see a couple of dings right here, but I kept this pivot point the same and progressively hammered the material out until I measured. I needed about 3/16, an eighth to 3/16. Of course, you can close that gap up, and I netted somewhere in that neighborhood. So I got to dolly and play with this, and then get this radius to match up good. It is starting to come in really well. I'll have to remark it, obviously, because I moved material. And then I see, where I've got these arrows, you can see there's a gap right there. Got to work that a little bit more. And other than that, she'll bolt down and look really good. There's a welting that goes in here and slides all the way down, comes in between the panels. And I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. I might tighten these up enough to not use it. I just think it looks good when you have very finely dressed corners. That fender welting is nice. I have it on the 37, and I may have talked about it before. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. You can see I'm clamping down here and here. Of course, when I put that bend in there, that flattened this out. But with all that rolling, it's a little curved. I have 10 gauge in there just simply because I don't have I'm not going to grind up a bunch of shims of 7 gauge. I know that this one underneath here, let's take a look. This guy right here, see, I'm lined up with the fender. It's got a shadow, but 7 gauge will fit in there very nice. I've got it clamped. I'm going to back up. I've got it clamped down. There'll be bolts just like on the top about every 6 inches, fastening that together. Do that, but I'm just not at that phase yet. I want to get this as perfect as I can across that plane, get this rolled, get this edge welded, get that corner welded going down, get that radius off, finish this side, and then come and flange that, right? Get that profile for the rear fender, paper pattern, something like that. And that'll take some time because I'll have to kind of fit and on and off and on and off and on and off. But it's worth it. This thing's been on and off. Oh shoot! I mean, you've seen the videos, but I mean, if I cover 15-20% of the work of the finish that I'm doing, the other 80% is taking that off and on and off and on and off and on. But you know what? In the end, it's certainly worth it. It's certainly worth it. When you get the corners to line up, the body lines line up, and you just keep tapping and stretching and shrinking and doing everything that you can just to get everything dialed in. It looks so pretty in the end. So I'm very, very, very happy with how it's progressing. It is challenging. It's extremely challenging. The other purpose for the 7 gauge, I might have mentioned it, but is to bury, a tapered head screw or a countersunk screw bolt, probably 5/16, 2 of them, 2 or 3 of them, maybe 3 of them up here because of the distance, and then 2 of them back there, and weld them into the 7 gauge into a countersink, and then weld that 7 gauge on. Now I did that with the 37, and I did get rust between the layers, but what I did on the 37 is I rolled the running boards in 10 gauge, and then I put a 10 gauge picture frame around it, and then put the mat, the rubber step into it. In that vehicle, that step is used all the time. In this vehicle, I'm thinking more than likely in this vehicle, you can get right up to it. I'm going to probably just paint these because this is going to be more a higher level build than the 37. That's what I'll say. It's going to be more thorough, more fine, a higher level of quality. The 37 I wanted to drive every day. This is going to be a driver, but I want it to show really well. So there you have it. I am making progress. And as you know, like with everything else, like with those, like with everything else, you do them in pairs, right? Once I get to the other side, everything is going to go so much faster. I'm nearly to the point where I should probably shift to the other side because I've got a couple of phases of the project done. I know because I used a dolly that I used a form, a buck, that surface is the mirror image of that surface. I know that the aprons I did in pairs and rolled and profiled them over and over and over again. So I know that it's going to show well, it's going to line up well, and all that. There is a minimum amount of probably surfacer is about it so far. There'll be a little bit of fill in these areas here where it was welded. I've tapped and tapped and tapped, and you kind of get to a point where you don't want to stretch or shrink, or I do anyway, to start to upset the definition of the radiuses and stuff like that. You want to keep that integrity in that shape as perfect as possible. And I suppose a guy could sit on that for quite a few hours and get it out. And I may do that. It all depends on the day. But it's really coming along, and I'm very proud of it. So click the like button, would you? It does help me. It helps me a lot. And because it gives the video the opportunity to move forward, or my channel to move forward on the list, and it pops up so others can see it too. Again, this isn't I don't make money on this channel. It's not that kind of a thing, but I do like the comments, and I do like the opportunity for other people to be able to share their insights with me. I've gotten so many ideas doing this method, and I've grown substantially over the last few years. So thank you. Here we are, finished welding out the corners now, the radii. Chop the apron down so it doesn't hang below the mounting area or the fender apron, and just got both of them on here and welded them up and radiused the corners. Cleaned them up, sanded them. So now it's time to probably just do a little bit of dolly work with a straight edge. You can see, I can see it right here, right there. So that's a low spot. So now I'm going to just slowly work down the edges on this, on both of them, just to make sure this is all nice and straight. Of course, in the rig that you'd seen me set up with the angle iron and the angle iron, I pushed them, I clamped them together, so that gave me a pretty true representation of the, of this line. But it's hard to see, but you can kind of see it in the lights. There's a few puckers. in there and in this one. But we got a nice sharp straight line. Camera doesn't do it justice, but I just want to make sure that I got that all dollied and straight. And then I'll start working on the aprons. And these marks have been on here for some time, but when I did the wood buck, the forming buck, I noted that would have to come out a little bit, and that would have to go in a little bit. So now I can, slide the running board in and out and in and out and in and out, and slowly dolly along those edges to get it in. The goal is that the apron in the back is perpendicular with the ground. Car's in the same spot it's been in for a while, and the car is level. So I can gauge off of there and find my distances and get that on. Then we can, after that gets drilled out and put on, I can then mark and start the forming for the rear fenders. Do you ever think that running boards would take that much work? I mean, holy shyster. But again, the second one, of course, went lightning fast by comparison to the first one, because the first one you're trying to learn processes and techniques to use to get to where you're going. And then you just apply the principles to the next one. So you skip all the phase of trying to figure out what you're going to do next. So making my way. 6:30 in the morning. What's the guy doing? Got to make the fender shims. Let's cut it. Alrighty then. Made the cardboard cutout, passenger side, driver's side. Scribed a line on the apron and at the end. Lined this up with this edge. Drew my pattern on very carefully and cut my pattern. I did one test fit, but I'm hitting down here. So now I need to take a little off of it. Let's see how it fits. So that bead will intersect this bead. I'll glass into here. I might cut that off straight, or I don't know yet, but this will glass in, and then the fender gets cut right off at the bottom. So she'll turn right in after she's all bolted on. Looks like I can get a little bit closer. So I'll mark it. Looks like on this edge I can go in. See, I got this set against the stop. So I got a little bit more I can take off of here. And then I'll get that into a material thickness here. And we'll be good to go. And he's bolted across the bottom. Okay, 1/8 inch strap. You can see my waist below the strap. That'll mark, and I'll cut that all straight. This is obviously all coming apart. What I got left to do is to drill, put a taper, flush, a chamfered screw into there, come onto here, and then secure the running board to that. So that's what I got left to do. But she's turning out spectacular. Let me get up again. It's looking really good. Really nice. So there's where we are so far. Alright, thought I'd give you a quick look here. This side I have mounted on. You can see, you know, I scraped this a couple of times, but those dark spots there are where I tack welded a piece of metal on to form the channel or the break on this side. So that I'll show you in a minute. It is bolted through. The apron is fully bolted on. The front is bolted through. Oh, they're right there, those 3 bolts. And then you can see the apron is continuously bolted on. There's the rear channel, and that forms around the fender. So I got maybe a little bit of tapping to do because of the, you know, I'll tap this here a little bit. That's fitting okay, but I'll tap that there so we get a little bit tighter fit. But up here, these are 2 1/8 inch, 1 1/4 1/8 inch thick straps on either side to give a continuous grab. Now you can see the sheet metal on the running board here, and probably the apron in some cases. Yeah, there on the apron. That'll all get trimmed then. I'll mark that out and I'll trim that. Or if I get it up on the lift, I could just take and simply sand it off, right, with a flapper. I need 1 more bolt in the back here. I don't have that. There's the 7 gauge material, and I still need to bond this to that, whether it be through welding or through panel bond. I'm starting to research a little bit of this whole panel bond thing because that's looking more and more and more attractive to me. So, oh, and then I got in and I just tack welded the flange for the apron. Once the apron comes back off, then I'll finish weld that. And that flange will bolt through vertically right here. 2 bolts. So then everything will be secured. The bead, I kind of drew it on here. This bead then, I'll blend that into the fiberglass. I'm going to nip this bead right at where that intersection meets. But I want to put the other side on and measure both of them so that they're exactly the same. Anyway, that'll be formed into the fiberglass. This will obviously be follow that radius, and then that'll be cut off. So that side's done. I'm in the process of working on the driver's side. A couple of things I did on both sides is where this brake was and this brake was, I welded this corner, put a little fill on the inside, then sanded it, put a bit of a radius on it. Of course, this was welded and finished, and then I just did that same thing on this side where let me flip it over. Trying to get some there. So I put a weld across the inside. I tacked it on the car, then brought it to the bench, put a weld on the inside. Then I cut off the excess material. It was sticking up, you know, half an inch or so. Then I carefully cut off the excess material and then ground a 45 all the way around. So I could visibly see both layers. Then I just built, tack all the way down, all the way around this to bond those two sides on the outside, and then just sanded it down. You can see where a couple of tacks sucked it in a little bit, but that's all right. It's all right. The finish is good. It's flat. I held it flat in the car. I clamped this down right at the rear running board mount. Clamped this all down so it held this straight across, and then tighten this up so that bead lines up with the bead on the fender. You can see on this side where I tacked it on, there's little burn spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tacks, and then one in the corner on the bottom just to hold it in. So now I'll put the running board on, clamp it all down, and proceed in drilling the holes to secure it to the apron. Showed you that. Just wanted to show you that I cleaned up over here and got that on. So drew the black line on here. Everything lines up. You can see where this runs into the fender, and then so it's likely on the 33 they very well could have been a little bit higher. Who knows, you know? So, you know, I have work to do. I'll block that across. These could likely have been tilted a little bit more that way, but I wanted them up like this. The body line runs not straight across, but those are up just a little bit from here. Got a bit of an approach angle. The tank is a little bit below, but I got those guys done. That was a huge project, and I'm happy that I'm finished with it. The hard part of it, anyway. So, moving right along. All right, hi guys. So we can see I have to finish the aprons. I got that tacked on, both sides tacked on. That's the final flange, just metal I had that I could stick up in there, and I'll finish that edge, trim it, and we'll go from there. So I got those both pulled off. Oh, also marked that one. You can see a hint of the line right there, and you can see that line going all the way across on the bottom there. So trim those up. I took some chamfered or flathead screws. They were Allen head. Welded them into the bottom, ground them, and then this piece of 7 gauge was hot rolled, so it had mill scale. And of course, I'd played games with mill scale in the past, saying, you can just paint over it, and you can't. You can, and the paint will stick to it, but eventually that mill scale will allow itself to pop off in spots, and it'll rust. So these were all, I just brushed on muriatic acid yesterday, and muriatic acid just eats off that mill scale, and it doesn't just, I mean, you gotta get a couple applications to get it off. So they're flash rusting right now, and I'm sanding that off. There's still a hint of it. You can still see some orange in there, and I'm going to get all that off. I just basically wiped over it with my DA and some 80 grit, both sides, but you can still see it, especially in the areas where the welds were. I ground the welds down. Now this is going to be panel bonded to the bottom of the running boards, which I will also sand all that off. I'm going to clean everything up. If I need to pull out the sandblaster and get some aluminum oxide, I can hit them. I don't think I will. They look like they're going to clean up. Probably grab a stripper disc for my angle grinder, and that'll get into these pits and areas here, you know, and get that out of there. But if I don't, I'm going to make sure that I have shiny metal or white metal. You know, if I can get to white metal with sandblasting, I'll do that. But in any event, then I'm going to shoot those immediately after it's blasted, because that takes to just like the muriatic acid. There is nothing. There's no skin. You're just seeing the muscle. And it's a humid day and cloudy. So that humidity just jumps right on that. So I got to pull those off, weld those up, finish that welding up, finish the edges, do all the trimming and cutting to the finished piece. Same thing on everything here. And then I'll throw everything in epoxy prime. Overhead, I made off my garage door opener a couple pieces of 3/8 plywood to a piece of I don't know, schedule 40 tubing, and then I made this little rig that you can see the screw in there. Well, I got one side shorter, so if I go in, see, I can detach it and then single-handedly reattach it, and that keeps it from falling out. I don't have the reason why it's PVC and in wood is I was originally starting with wood, but I just had what I had laying around. By the way, it's 8 feet to the bottom of that. It's just stuff I had laying around, an old form piece of tubing and that. But now that's hanging so that I can hang my rig in powder coat. So right now I'm cooking the first set of parts, but I'm basically powder coating all the brackets, the strapping for the running boards, these brackets, and the running board mount brackets. So I'm hanging those out in 2 levels. So I got the big running board mount brackets on top, longer wire hanging several of these straps. I might have to do 3 runs because I don't want them. As my wife said, she came out and helped me. It looks like you're making door chimes. Well, you certainly don't want them to chime. So then you got to clean them up. This one's got to get sanded again. This is a shim. The other one's in the oven. It goes in to space to close out the gap between the mount and the front fender, just to push the running board up against the front fender so that I can secure it back through that mount. But anyway, I might have an exact. Maybe I sprayed both of them. These are the same. These are the middles. This is the end. I radiused everything. Okay, they were just raw cut off pieces, but I radiused everything so that when you go under, you don't nick your hand bolting them up and that kind of thing. I also took the liberty to where did I do it now? On each one of these. Come on, I seriously did do it. Right there. Right there. Come on, focus. There's a D in there. I don't know what it's looking at. I got to get a better background with light. There. That one's a D. And that one's a P. Okay. So hopefully you can see that through the powder coating. But the whole point is then I don't have to sit there and size. I know what came off the passenger side. Because the middle, the front, and the rear are different lengths. These two are the same for the driver and passenger side, but that's an inch shorter, and the rear one is an inch shorter yet. So they will swap from side to side. But when you start getting into the drill holes for the running boards and everything else that's in there, and the fact that the front ones are symmetrical because they have holes for that spacer that I was talking about. I don't want to be running back and forth, so I marked those. I actually did the same thing on these, driver's side and passenger side. I marked all these, driver's side. So there's the inner and outer for the front side of the board and the back side of the board. Anyway, just so everything goes together seamlessly and there's no questions. So I'm looking at, what are we at, about 110, 210, 205, 205 in the afternoon. I'm looking at yanking them from the oven in about 10, 15 minutes. So everything should be heated up to temp and should be flowed out. Okay, there we go. The first set of parts is out of the oven. And it's pretty cool. You can see my marking detail. See a little chamfer on the grind mark right there. But wonderful, satisfied, and happy. The second set of parts is in the oven, cooking. 29 minutes left. Just popped it in, set it for 36 minutes so that the temp can get up and recover from opening the door. So getting her down. Okay, all the pieces and parts are out. 3 brackets for each side, 4 bands for each side, and the shims that go in the front, the fenders. And then I quickly shot some epoxy on the bottom side of the running board braces. That's the 7 gauge that the running boards will be bonded to. I'm going to spray the other side tomorrow, and then what I'll do is I'll sand off the areas where the bonding will go, where the panel bond will go. But of course you want to keep it protected, so I'll get the 2 coats of epoxy on each of those. Clean all of these up, do the same thing, get 2 coats of epoxy on these, the rear apron and the side aprons. Finish the welding. I will finish the welding and dressing of those. Trim the edges on everything that's got the mark on it, and get them into epoxy. That'll cure for a little while, and in a few days, for me anyway, in a few days, probably for you moments, the panel adhesive 08115 3M panel adhesive will be in, and then I will marry the running boards to those for the permanent solution, and there you have it. I do have orange peel in my, I just sprayed it, it's going to be about 5-6 minutes ago, and grabbed my phone to shoot it, but it doesn't really matter if it flows out good. I'll change my settings a little on the gun. Obviously I'm a lot of paint and not enough air, but it's okay with me. This will all be the whole bottom side of the running boards. After I seam seal around here, bond those on, seam seal around the outside, then the whole bottom will get the same treatment as the belly of the car, which is a box liner that can't remember the name of it right offhand. Never can remember the name of anything, but that'll get treated with that. So going well. ran out of paint. 2 coats, that was the second. I'll have to just coat this one when I coat the running boards and the rear apron. So that's life. Alright, I carefully found a spot out of the way to grab that by the wire, and I stuck it through the cage of the fan just to get it out of the way so that I can get, you maybe noticed in the video that I was struggling getting around these upper edges and stuff. So I got the second coat on that, you know, those are done. And then I got the underside of the running boards all coated. So in a couple of days, the panel bond will be here, and I'll sand out the areas between the ribs that come in contact with this. I'll mark everything on the ends. You know, where am I going to sand? I don't think you saw that. Mark where the perimeter of that is, and then mark where I'm going to sand on each end. Transfer that to here. Go back to clean metal. Take the panel bond and prime the bare metal with a trowel of some sort, you know, scraper, but body knife, mud knife, whatever. Scrape that. Do the same thing on here. This will be mounted to the car because I want that alignment to be where it needs to be. And then put a bead, however many, 3 or 4 beads on, set it down, and clamp it on the beads on the top side of the board. Just get enough squish to secure it down and hold it nice and flat. And then we'll have the 1-piece running boards made out of 2 pieces, sealed, and no moisture possibility. We have a sacrifice right there. He's dead. I'll have to pick him out later. That's a mosquito too. Anyway, got everything opened up. This isn't a paint job, it's a rust prevention, but at this point everything will be protected until I get to it for blocking it out and whatever fill that needs to be done, and then surfacing it, primer surfacer. So even covered the car up.